Hey, good Monday, everybody. Great to see you. Got an update for you on a couple potent storm systems in the forecast over the next week or so that could bring severe weather and snowfall through portions of the lower 48. And then after that, we're going to talk about the long range, kind of break down what we can expect going into February. And I've got my eyes on a pattern that could produce multiple winter storms in that time frame that could bring snow and ice. And I'll tell you who I think has the best shot at that in today's video. Now, if you're new to the channel and you haven't already, go ahead and like the video, subscribe, and hit that bell for the latest notifications. That will help you kind of stay up to date as we enter February and whatever it may bring us here in the long run. And then as the rest of 2025 keeps on tracking on, that severe weather threat in the spring and then eventually hurricane threat in the fall, you'll want to stay around for both of those as we keep on working through the new year. Alrighty, folks, I will also say if you haven't already, you can comment, let me know where you're watching from and what you're seeing out there. Always fun to read those and kind of gauge where my viewers are watching from. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive on into the data and get you the latest information. Now, starting with upper level water vapor loop here on satellite next to me, you can kind of see a couple distinct areas that kind of jump out, at least here in the kind of now time frame here on the map. Now, down south, we do have some pretty potent moisture working on through, and this is actually leading to an area of quite a bit of showers here through the Carolinas, Georgia, Mississippi, and even into Alabama. They are seeing some of that green in the upper levels, and that is translating to rainfall down at the surface. But as you know, as far as big features go, the big story is what's spinning out near California. We've got this big area of low pressure. This is bringing some light rain and snow to California, and will kind of just park itself over California and eventually into the Four Corners by the time we get through a day or so from now, and then that will set the stage for a big winter weather and severe weather maker into this coming weekend as we go into about that 5 to 7 day time frame. Now, another big thing that might not have immediately jumped out to you, but look up here, Canada. You see this kind of sharp cutoff between all this green and then kind of this more blue color. Well, this is an Arctic front that is going to bring very active weather tonight into tomorrow, including snow squalls, and then behind it, a clipper system that is going to dump more snow on top of some of the same areas. So we're talking about this kind of warm up through much of the south and even into the central plains. Well, if you're watching in the northeast up towards the Great Lakes, yeah, you're far from a warm up. You've got another shot of Arctic air on the way, and that those kind of wintry conditions continue for you folks. Now let's time it out for you in the upper levels. This is this afternoon what we expect it to look like, or maybe not look like, but what the math kind of comes out to. You don't really see this stuff, but our upper level vorticity or energy map, you can see that big spin over California. Definitely going to be a big storyline as we showed you in satellite imagery. And then look up here into Canada, another area of low pressure with this Arctic front that is going to be pushing south and east towards New England and other portions of the northeastern United States. So let's time it out. Here we go. This is tomorrow morning. Let me back it up just a little bit here. You can see that big trough scooping on down and kind of clipping the northern half of the northeast up through upstate New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, even down into the Boston area. Going to see that Arctic powerful front push through and bring that snow squall potential for your Tuesday morning, and then that gets on through. And check this out, another piece of energy by Wednesday afternoon. This one's going to fire off a clipper from Minnesota all the way through the northeast, going to bring some snowfall and other active weather to the northeast and a reinforcing shot of cold air. So trust me, it's still going to be quite cold up there, but behind that comes our next major storm system. Again, I told you that low pressure in California going to hang back there a little bit. This is Wednesday afternoon, but eventually kind of getting pushed off towards the east, and that will cause a pretty good severe weather threat and winter weather threat by the time we get into this weekend. Now, let's time it out for you folks and give you kind of the latest model data here. This is our NAM model. This is for really right about, let me move it ahead into time, right about now. You can see those showers continuing through the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama. Not a big deal. We saw a little bit of snow this morning into northern Tennessee. I talked about that in yesterday's video. If you live up there, let me know if you saw any or how much ended up accumulating on the ground. Would love to hear those reports. But just good old-fashioned rain from Charlotte, Columbia, down through Atlanta, Greenville, Spartanburg, even into the Florida Panhandle, seeing some of that rainfall for the first time since our big historic snowstorm that we had last week. So don't forget, you are in a climate that generally has rain and not snow. So do not be surprised to see that falling from the sky. Now, we keep on going through this afternoon, and you can see what a mess it is up into eastern Canada. You see all this blue up here? Yeah, that is that very cold air that is going to kind of begin to push through and triggering that snow with it by this afternoon. And it's really this evening and kind of about that 4 or 5 p.m. Time frame, you see some of that snow beginning to clip the UP of Michigan, specifically the eastern upper peninsula up into the northern thumb by about sunset tonight. And then we get into the overnight and check it out. Let's go ahead and zoom on in for you into the northeast. I'll go ahead and change the map here and change this to an even more high resolution model for you. Check it out. Here we go this evening and really overnight tonight. This is about 9 p.m., 10 p.m., 11 p.m. This is a brutal squall line of snow working on through. You kind of see this little front end piece of snow. This is just good old fashioned moderate to heavy snowfall, but look at this little band right into here. That is the actual front itself, and that Arctic front, these Arctic fronts are very small and dense, but they're very powerful and generally moving quickly. So it's not going to be a long lasting hit, but you're going to get whiteout conditions overnight tonight. And I'll tell you, it's a very thin little band of snow there behind this bigger band of snow you see, but both of them combined could drop a quick couple of inches of snow into portions of the interior northeast here overnight, and then keep on going, crossing the Finger Lakes by about 6 a.m., 7 a.m. here, 8 a.m. The line begins to break up a little bit, but going to still bring some active weather through Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, back down into New York, even the northern half there of Pennsylvania, and could clip portions of northeastern Ohio as well before losing some steam as it heads for the I-95, but don't rule out little segments of it making it all the way to the coast. This is later tomorrow morning. You see these little individual pieces trying to make it all the way to the Atlantic seaboard, and some of them getting close there. Potentially could drop some quick accumulations in places as far south and east as Connecticut, Rhode Island, Boston, maybe northern New Jersey, and potentially even some flakes trying to fly in New York City. But the real potent part of it going to be back up towards the interior northeast out of that storm system. So, and that is not the end of it. So I don't know why I'm changing maps. Sorry, let me back it up, and we'll talk about the next storm as well. So that is kind of the I guess more potent bit of it. Let me change it back to our lower resolution model so we get a little bit further out into time here. So we'll keep it going. That is the snow squalls, but it's not the end of it, folks. Check this out. By Tuesday afternoon, this is when the snow squalls are done and that first shot of Arctic air is done moving through, but behind it, a reinforcing shot of cold air and a clipper system working on into kind of the forecast here into the UP of Michigan by Tuesday afternoon, northern Wisconsin, portions of northern Minnesota seeing some of that snow begin to fly around, and even getting into eastern Canada here, Ontario through Quebec seeing some snow. Again, the northern thumb of Michigan getting a pretty good thumping of snow here. This is Tuesday evening, about 7 p.m., 6 p.m. time frame. We'll keep it going a little bit further ahead in a time. Overnight during the midnight hour, crossing into Wednesday, the Finger Lakes getting into snow, the Catskills up into Vermont, New Hampshire. And this is a feisty little low pressure, 992. The wind's going to be kicking around. That snow's going to be kind of blowing a bit in the area. And then I think this has the chance to get into areas like Boston, Manchester, Concord, areas like that could get some snow out of this. This would be early Wednesday morning into Wednesday afternoon. The storm then moving over through the down east areas of Maine, getting off the coast, kind of almost phasing a little bit from the interior into the coastline. That could bring some snow into, like I said, those down east areas of Maine, into Vermont, New Hampshire, back towards the Boston area, seeing some of that snowfall. And then on the backside, some scattered snow showers throughout the overnight of Wednesday into Thursday, and then that gets on out of here, and you can see our next storm setting up shop back into the southern plains. Now, before we get there, though, let's talk about snowfall totals, and I think it'll be a pretty notable amount of snow for some folks in the area. Especially the further north you go. So if you're into the UP of Michigan, into the thumb itself, extreme northern Wisconsin, this is from both systems, that kind of Arctic front and the Clipper system. Models coming in a pretty good range here, about half a foot to a foot of snow into portions of the UP, the northern thumb. Now, not everyone's going to get that high. Others will be in that 3 to 5 inch range. Some even further south will be in the 1 to 3 inch range. But overall, a pretty good looking snowstorm here, considering, it is kind of getting later into lake effect season, and this isn't quite lake effect. It's more of an actual system. So not bad totals out of that. But then you get into the northeast, and also going to run some higher end totals, especially into the interior through the Tug Hill up into the Adirondacks, back down towards the Buffalo area into the Finger Lakes, down even into Erie. Areas like that could cross half a foot of snow between both systems. And then also watching here into the Boston area, into the down east areas of Maine. Now, a little bit more uncertainty here, and most of this is going to come from the Clipper, but I would not be surprised to see higher totals in this. This looks like more of 1 to 2. I would say we could see 3 to 5 inches in this area if some of the model guidance, like I showed you, is kind of on the right track. Would not surprise me. So watch that area to kind of overperform some of these totals. And if the storm were to shift far enough south, New York City could try to get in on the fun. Portions of Connecticut could get a little bit more snow than pictured here. Also, the Allegheny is going to get some pretty good snow out of that snow squall set up and kind of northwest flow snow behind it going into the earlier part of this week. And then could even get some back end snow on the backside of that Clipper by the time we get later on into the week. So definitely a snowy week in the Northeast. What about temperatures, though? Because I told you that Arctic air is going to work on through. Let's go ahead and move this ahead in a time. This is this afternoon, warming up big back into the northern plains. We're still chilly down into the south as kind of some of that rain is working on through, keeping temperatures a little bit lower. But you'll notice here comes the blue into the northeast, that big shot of Arctic air. This is Tuesday afternoon. We're well below average. We're talking 10, 20 degrees below what we should be this time of year. However, really everyone else in the country warming back up. We had that big kind of freeze a week ago. Everyone was in the freezer. Now most of us getting back into warmer territory outside of the Northeast. This is Tuesday afternoon. We get on into Wednesday afternoon. Warms up a little bit more in the Northeast. Everyone else seeing really a good amount of orange on the map through the Southeast into the Northern Plains, really especially warming up back up into the prairies of Canada. A little chilly down into the desert Southwest thanks to that cutoff low. But then we get to Thursday afternoon, that reinforcing shot of cold air. We're right back in the freezer in Maine, into New England, down into Pennsylvania, and even the northern bit of the mid-Atlantic going to get clipped by it. But everyone else, check out all this warmth beginning to build back in as the Gulf kind of returns that flow northward up the Mississippi River Valley. A lot of us getting 10, 15, even 20 plus degrees above what we should be this time of year. And that, as nice as it is going to unfortunately lead to the potential of some severe weather by the time we go into the middle part of this week. All right, so let's go ahead and time it out for you. Let's move this all the way ahead into Wednesday afternoon. So today's Monday. This is Wednesday on our latest European model. And you can kind of see here the setup. We've got this big bowling ball low pressure piece of energy down near the four corners. This is what we've been talking about, stuck over California. Well, at this point, what's going to happen is this is going to move east, and we're going to get a tremendous amount of lift in this circled area. We've got a ton of diffluence aloft, basically just meaning the air above us is separating. That's creating a void, and something's got to replace it. So the air at the surface does, it rises, and that creates all sorts of storminess and rainfall and low pressure and all of that good stuff. But that's what's going to happen here. And that combined with those warm temperatures I showed you folks, that's going to lead to a severe weather potential back out into portions of Texas and potentially other areas as we go later on into the week. With this setup, and you can see that here from the latest outlook on the Storm Prediction Center. This is day 3, already a marginal risk from Dallas into Fort Worth, Waco, Killeen, Austin, even San Antonio rather, and then we have in San Angelo, I guess both there. Then we have this slight risk kind of down here into smaller populated area of Texas, but into the Brady area, getting into Junction, Texas, Rock Springs, Campwood, and even down it looks like near Kerrville. I might have said that right. Fredericksburg, areas like that. That's for Wednesday. But if we change the map and we go even further out in time, day 4, check this out. Another area to watch from Waco, Killeen, Austin, San Antonio, even getting towards the Houston area, just south of Dallas, Fort Worth. And then after that, the map kind of gets a little bit more quiet, but we will watch for more severe weather potential. Now, that's problem number 1 with this storm system, but there's going to be another problem, and that's winter weather. It's going to be a very dynamic storm here by Thursday into Friday. Check this out. This is a feisty looking storm, folks. Thursday afternoon. You wonder why we're having all this rain and severe weather. I mean, this is a tremendous amount of lift in here. That's going to produce a lot of precipitation. And I'll tell you, we're looking at Texas right now for the severe weather threat. If we get a little bit more instability, and we'll know more as we get closer, areas further north and even further east, keep your eyes open. We could see something in Oklahoma, Arkansas, maybe as far north as Kansas and Missouri. That's probably pushing it a little bit. But if we get a little bit of a triple point to set up there, we'll need to watch for severe weather potential. And then the storm works eastbound And this is when the winter weather threat will begin into the weekend through portions of the Northeast. I just showed you all that cold air that's bottled up there. That combined with this low pressure basically tracking right across the Ohio Valley and across the Mason-Dixon line and out to sea, there's going to be a swath to the north, I think, where precipitation and cold air are able to overlap, and we could get a nice kind of little winter storm. Now, right now, the models are not suggesting anything major. But we'll monitor it, and still does look like a pretty good shot of snow, and you can see that here. This is the latest GFS model. This is starting the afternoon of Wednesday. This is that first day of severe weather potential. Again, not quite in mesoscale range yet, so it looks like just rain over Texas. Probably going to be a little more feisty than just good old-fashioned rain showers here, but we'll move it further ahead into time. This gets us into Thursday afternoon, another day of potential severe weather to watch, and then all that rain moves up through Little Rock, Memphis, into St. Louis, back into Kansas. Now, I'll tell you, folks, if you're watching in Nebraska, Kansas, into Iowa, it looked like a couple days ago this could have been a good winter storm for you. Now it's trended a little bit warmer, which has upped the severe weather threat potential a little bit. Now, not so much for you, but for other areas, but has really brought down that winter weather potential, at least in the plains. Now, you kind of traded with the Northeast, though. Their chances have gone up. And you'll see that here. Again, this is overnight Thursday into Friday. A whole lot of rain into the Tennessee Valley, working through the Southeast, the Ohio Valley, even rain on the backside of our low pressure, which is centered right here. Now, what's going to happen is now at this point, the low pressure is going to hook it eastbound and stop kind of moving inland. A couple days ago, again, it looked like it was going to take this track. That seems to be off the table, and now kind of getting squished down by some upper level convergence to the north here that is kind of helping to guide it there across its new path. So kind of interesting how the models flipped on that one. But you can see the side effect of that is this. This is by the evening of Friday. Now, it looks like rain into the mid-Atlantic, Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York City. You're right on that line here, but just on the northern fringe here, we've got some snow and some ice kind of beginning to break out here into portions of Indiana, maybe the Chicago area, Detroit potentially, into maybe Cleveland, and then you get a little bit further ahead in time. This is the overnight of Friday. A nice swath of snow setting up for Boston, Connecticut, back into Rhode Island, into kind of the Pennsylvania, New Jersey state line there, down into the Hudson Valley, maybe northern New Jersey, New York City, right on the edge of it here. And it's a nice little winter storm. And look at it crank up as it pulls off. That could bring a nice little thumping of snow on the backside. Now, that's just the GFS. What about the European? We love to look at multiple models here. Well, let's time it out for you. Here's the storm, all that severe weather potential, and then gets to basically the exact same place as the GFS. And it's pretty similar, a little bit warmer on the European and a little bit further north. And just a little less robust of a storm system, but it's got the same general look. So we're in the ballpark here for that potential of winter weather. And you look at the ensembles, and yeah, they're pretty excited about it. This is the chance of at least an inch of snow falling here within a 24-hour time frame. Looking back towards Colorado, New Mexico, pretty good chance of snow from Wednesday into Thursday, and then the chances die down pretty significantly into Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, but you do see a swath here of snow potential, at least, especially starting from Chicago, points kind of eastbound into the Northeast. You can see right here into New England, back into the Chicago area. Not a huge signal, nothing that is screaming this is going to be a major winter storm, but you're running a good 30, 40, even 50, 60% chance of accumulating snow in areas of New York, Pennsylvania, back towards Detroit, Chicago. So not a bad signal by any means, and you can see it really bumps up a little bit right at this point, where areas here around the Finger Lakes running near a 70, 80% chance of some accumulating snowfall. On the European ensembles, the GFS ensembles, arguably just as excited here. Again, not a huge signal into Kansas, Nebraska, and Iowa. But you start getting east of there into Chicago and then into the Northeast. Again, a pretty good signal for some sort of winter weather event. Now, this would be the weekend. Today's Monday. Obviously, a way to go before we know more than what we do right now. But we will watch that potential, and you can see another storm system trying to work in on the map right behind it. All right, so that's kind of that storm. What about the long range? What's on the way as we flip the calendar into February? Again, Saturday is the first day of February here. And, well, what is the month going to bring? Well, this is the first storm system, so let's kind of time it out for you, or kind of time out after it, but I just want to show you where we're at into time. This is Thursday evening. Here's our low pressure system. Now, here's that ridge to the east. That's what's bringing all that warm air out ahead of the storm system and going to make it feel almost a little bit like spring even later this week as that storm system pushes towards many of us in in the east. After it gets on out of here, though, the next stage is kind of a bit of a question mark. The model's been all over the place a little bit, but a week from right now is what this is. This is by next Sunday into Monday, and you'll notice through the southern tier of the country, zonal flow begins to take shape here on the GFS ensembles. That would indicate a bit more of a kind of warm and muggy pattern. At least for February standards, rather. This would be February at this point. But definitely kind of more of a spring-like feel there. Now, we do have troughing up into the Pacific Northwest. That could bring very active, cold, snowy weather for you folks. And really, honestly, what this looks like is what we've been waiting for. This is finally more of a La Nina look with a more active subtropical jet, or a really southeast ridge, rather less of a subtropical jet, but more troughing into the PNW and areas like that. So this is more of that classic La Nina look we've been waiting on. The question is, how long does it hang around? Does it kind of last through all of February? Well, the GFS ensembles here kind of gets another area of troughing back into eastern Canada, the northeast, by about 10 days from now. Keeps another trough in the Pacific Northwest, and then keeps that ridge in the central part of the country. That would keep things pretty quiet, but I think right around this range, this is going into the 7th through the 10th of February, that's when we need to watch for the next kind of big winter weather potential. And here's the setup. It's basically a big block of cold air to the north, and then our southeast ridge of sorts to the south. And what this is going to do is create a pretty strong battleground zone, if you will, in between the two, or a nice little active storm track that's going to overlap here, I think, with our warm air and our cold air, and that could bring snow, ice, and potential severe weather once we get to that time frame, and potentially rounds of it if the pattern locks into place. And I'll tell you, the European ensembles agree pretty well with the GFS. I'll just kind of skip out into that time frame. Here it is. It's a pretty similar look, right in that range. We've got this ridge in the east that's going to try to keep things warm, but then we've got this trough out into the west, and that's going to kind of try to keep things cool, and whatever happens in between, well, that's going to be our storm track. Now, here's the caveat. Where does this set up? That's the bigger question mark, I think, at this point. All of this energy could kind of shift this way, it could shift that way, it could shift this way, it could shift that way. You get the point. The models are going to struggle with that a little bit, but if the boundary sets up right here along the Appalachia chain, then we could have big winter storm potential into the Ohio Valley, into the Midwest. If it sets up, let's say, along the Mississippi River Valley, or something, let me do it a little bit more like this. If it sets up more in here, then we're going to have big winter storm potential into the plains. Now, if the models are really wrong and this sets up more along the eastern seaboard, then we're going to run the potential of big kind of coastal storms up the Appalachia chain into the I-95, areas like that. That's just what we don't really know yet, but I think we're pretty confident this gradient is going to set up either way. The question will be then, what kind of impacts do we get out of it? And you can see that on the temperature map as well. So we'll move this ahead through this week. This is the start of next week, a big warm up on the way. I think next week you're going to kind of get spring fever through much of the east to start February. Groundhog Day looks quite warmer than average into Punxsutawney there. So we'll see, if maybe the weather gets Phil in kind of a mood that is a little more spring-like. But you can see all that warm air. However, you keep on going and you can see that boundary beginning to set up. One shot of cold air into the northeast, and then that kind of gets beaten back down. But right around here, again, the start of that second week of February, very cold air up to the north and west, very warm air to the south and east, and that storm track going to be somewhere in between there. Now, the exact placement and all, that's what we need to figure out, but you get the point here. And just to show you what this generally could look like. Now, this is not a forecast. I'm about to show you the long range Euro, but take this as a general idea of what could happen or what this could look like on the surface, and we'll kind of move it ahead into time. So move all the way out. Now, after this weekend storm, things look to get quiet for at least a little bit. Now, we are watching this little clipper system here. This would be about a week from now. This is the weekend, though. This is Saturday afternoon. You can see pretty quiet outside of the west where we could have a little bit more of an atmospheric river of sorts. Then we get that clipper system for the start of next week. And then it stays pretty quiet for a while until right around here. This is when that boundary sets up around the 7th, the 8th, the 9th. And just kind of watch what happens. I'll just move it ahead. There's one storm system, another storm system, another storm system. So you get the idea. Wherever the boundary sets up, that's where the active storm track is going to be. Now, this run of the European, it was somewhere in here. So you had kind of snow and ice to the north and then rain to the south. That could be where it happens. It could happen in more of a slanted orientation like this. I think that's probably a little bit more likely than what that European run showed. But we'll see. It'll all come down to kind of the models figuring it out and us kind of following them along. But it does look like an active kind of middle to February. I will mention that. Whether that's snow, ice, or severe weather where you're at, that's what still needs to be ironed out, but we will definitely keep you up to date. Alrighty, folks, y'all have a great one. Stay safe, stay warm. I'll see you all next time.